The fear that spread through the colonies felt heavy, like a cold wind that never stopped. People tried to live normal lives, but no one could ignore the truth. British soldiers stood in the streets. Their boots hit the ground with a sound that reminded everyone who held the power. Families whispered inside their homes, hoping no one outside could hear. Everyone knew the war was real now, and the outcome would decide the future of every child in America. In those days, the people felt torn between hope and despair. Merchants tried to keep their shops open, but even buying bread felt unsafe. Farmers prayed their crops would survive, because they did not know what tomorrow would bring. Mothers tried to comfort their children while hiding their own tears. No one wanted to admit how dark the days had become, but deep down everyone felt it. Some spoke quietly about surrender. Others held on to faith that something would change. But change seemed far away. Every morning felt the same as the last, and every night brought more fear. Rumors moved faster than the wind. Some said the British were planning new attacks. Some claimed the Continental Army was too weak to continue. The truth was hard to find, and doubt grew like a shadow over every home. Still, even in the fear, there was a quiet strength. Americans had always been people who fought for what they believed in, even if they had nothing left to give. The spirit of freedom did not disappear. It simply hid itself inside the hearts of ordinary men and women. They kept going, step by step, even when their legs shook. They kept speaking of liberty, even when their voices trembled. They kept believing, even when belief felt impossible. There was a moment when many thought the war might already be lost. Supplies were low, soldiers were tired, families were divided, but something in the American soul refused to break. It was the same feeling that had carried them across oceans, built towns out of forests, and survived storms and hunger. It was a belief that freedom was worth the pain. And so people waited, hoping for a spark to rise out of the darkness. They looked toward their leaders, wondering if there was a path forward that they could not yet see. They prayed that someone, somewhere, would find a way to change the course of the struggle. Even without knowing it, the people themselves were part of that change. Their courage, their patience, and their silent strength were shaping the story every day. In those quiet moments, when the world felt uncertain, the truth remained clear to those who listened to their hearts. No matter how strong the enemy seemed, a nation built on the belief in freedom would not fall easily. Something was coming, something hidden, brave, and necessary. The darkness was real, but so was the light waiting to rise from it. The decision that General Washington faced was heavier than any battle he had ever fought. He knew the American army could not win by strength alone. The British had more soldiers, better weapons, and control over important cities. Every move Washington made was watched. Every plan he tried was quickly discovered. It felt as if the enemy always knew what he was thinking before he acted. That fear pushed him into long nights, staring at maps and wondering how to protect a dream that seemed to slip further away each day. Washington was a man who understood pressure. He carried the hope of an entire nation on his shoulders, yet he showed calmness in front of his soldiers. But inside, he felt the weight deeply. He began to see that victory would not come from big speeches or brave marches. It would come from information, from knowing the enemy's next step, from uncovering secrets before they could cause harm. For a moment he wondered if anyone would dare to help in such a dangerous way. As the days passed, he quietly shared his plan with a few trusted men. He explained that he needed ordinary Americans who could move unnoticed. People who could blend into daily life. People who could listen without being noticed and send news without drawing suspicion. It was a strange kind of courage, one that required silence instead of shouting, and patience instead of weapons. Some found it hard to believe that civilians could shape the war, but Washington believed in the hidden strength of the people. The search for such volunteers did not happen loudly. It moved through whispers, small conversations behind closed doors, and letters written with careful words. Washington knew he was asking people to risk everything. If caught, they would not be treated as soldiers. There would be no mercy. Still, he believed that somewhere, someone would feel the call to protect the land they loved in this quiet way. There was a mix of fear and hope among those who heard about the idea. Some felt their hearts race at the thought of helping but worried about their families. Others felt a pull deep inside them, a sense that this was their purpose. They were tired of feeling helpless while their towns suffered. Helping in secret felt like a way to fight back without raising a gun. Slowly, the message spread to the right ears. People who understood the value of silence stepped forward. They did not want fame. They did not seek glory. They simply wanted to do what was needed to protect their home. What Washington hoped for began to take shape. A small circle of brave souls prepared themselves for a different kind of battle, one fought in shadows instead of open fields. No one knew how it would end, but each person carried a quiet promise. They would do whatever they could, whatever it cost, to help America survive. It was the beginning of something new, something dangerous, and something that would change the course of the war in ways no one expected. The early days of the secret group began quietly, without any noise or celebration. Abraham Woodhull felt the weight of the choice he had made. He was not a soldier, and he had never planned to become part of a hidden war. But the sight of British soldiers walking freely through his hometown had changed something inside him. He could no longer watch from the sidelines while his country struggled for survival. He moved through the streets with calm steps, hiding the storm that grew in his heart. Benjamin Talmadge, who had known Abraham since childhood, understood that this mission needed someone who could keep a steady mind under pressure. He trusted Abraham's calm nature and careful thinking. Their conversations were short and cautious. Every word mattered now. What they were planning required trust deeper than friendship. It demanded silence, patience, and a promise that could never be spoken out loud. They knew their lives would change, but they also knew it was necessary. In another home, Anna Strong watched from her window as soldiers marched past. She had seen hardships, and she knew the risk that was coming. But she did not step back from it. She had a quiet strength, the kind that grows in people who carry their families and communities through hard times. When she agreed to help, she understood she would have to play a role that no one could suspect. She listened closely and learned what was needed, knowing each detail could save lives. Caleb Brewster, bold and fearless, was ready to act without hesitation. His skill on the water made him a powerful part of the group. He could move across dangerous shores where others would never dare to sail. His laughter and confidence hid the danger he faced, but deep down he knew the mission was bigger than any fear he had. He was willing to use his strength in ways that served the hidden effort growing around him. As these individuals stepped into their roles, the network began to take shape quietly. Nothing looked different from the outside. The same houses stood, the same shops opened, the same farms worked their land. But underneath the familiar sights, something new was forming. People who had lived ordinary lives now carried extraordinary secrets. They learned how to speak without saying too much, how to move without drawing attention, and how to trust each other without question. Meetings were simple and brief. No one wanted to risk being seen talking too long. A nod, a small gesture, or a whispered phrase was enough. The work they were preparing for would demand clear minds and steady hands. They had no guide, no map, and no guarantee of safety. Yet they walked forward because they understood what was at stake. A quiet bond grew between them, stronger than fear. They did not know where this path would lead, but they knew why they were walking it. Their town, their homes, and their hope for freedom depended on what they were building. And even before the first message was sent, they already felt the weight of the promise they had chosen to carry. The nights grew longer as the group began the quiet work that would define their new lives. Abraham sat at his small table, staring at the blank page in front of him. He held the pen tightly, knowing that one mistake could expose everything. He practiced writing numbers that stood for names, places, and plans. The codes were strange at first, but he learned them because he understood their purpose. Every mark on the paper had to hide the truth while still carrying it to the right hands. In another corner of town, Anna Strong moved with calm confidence as she hung laundry outside her home. To any passing soldier, she looked like a woman doing simple chores. But every cloth, every piece she placed on the line, carried meaning. A dark dress, a white handkerchief, or a certain position meant something different to the people watching from a distance. She worked carefully, making sure no movement seemed unusual. Her silence became her strength. At the same time, Caleb Brewster prepared his boat for late-night crossings. He checked the ropes, the oars, and the small places where messages could be hidden. The water was dangerous, especially with patrols moving along the coast, but he trusted the tides in his own steady hands. He preferred the open risk of the sea to the still danger of the land. The rolling waves gave him a strange comfort, as if they understood the weight he carried. Benjamin Talmadge, guiding the group from afar, organized the system with precision. He created a way for messages to travel safely, passing through different hands so no one person held too much information. He knew each step had to be perfect. A letter that arrived too late or a signal that went unseen could put everyone in danger. He studied every detail of their method, trying to imagine how the enemy might discover it and then finding ways to stay ahead. The process became a rhythm. Abraham traveled into the city, pretending to be an ordinary visitor. He listened carefully without drawing attention, watching the movements of soldiers, supplies, and officers. He returned home with his heart beating fast, knowing he held information that could change the course of the war. He wrote his reports quietly at night when the streets were silent. Anna learned to watch for Caleb's arrival across the water. Sometimes she waited hours, keeping her expression calm even when fear crept into her chest. When she saw the familiar signal from his small boat, she knew it was time to act. She walked outside as if she were checking the laundry, but her eyes read the message hidden in the night. Caleb took the reports, hiding them beneath boards where no one would think to look. He rode through darkness, guided only by moonlight and memory, carrying secrets the enemy desperately wanted but would never receive. Their lives no longer belonged to themselves alone. Every moment was shaped by caution, purpose, and silent courage. Without saying a word, they had become the unseen line of defense their country needed. The pressure around the town grew heavier as British patrols increased their movements. Abraham felt the change the moment he stepped onto the road. Soldiers looked at people more closely now, stopping carts, questioning travelers, and searching bags without warning. Every trip he made into the city felt tighter, the air thicker with suspicion. He kept his calm face, but inside he stayed alert, watching every shadow and listening for anything that hinted at danger. One afternoon, while pretending to shop for supplies, he sensed eyes following him. He stayed focused on his task, picking up small items as if nothing was wrong. He knew that turning too quickly or acting nervous would give him away. As he stepped out onto the street, he caught sight of a soldier watching him from a doorway. He kept walking at the same steady pace, even though his heartbeat pushed against his ribs. It took all his strength to remain natural until he reached the open road again. British officers questioned more families as the days passed. They knocked on doors early in the morning, asking where people had been, who they had spoken to, and why they traveled so often. Many citizens felt their stomachs tighten at every knock, praying the soldiers would leave without searching the house. The spy ring members blended in with everyone else, acting troubled but innocent, never hinting that they carried secrets that could cost them their lives. Caleb noticed the change on the water as well. More patrol boats drifted across the coast, their lanterns shining long yellow paths over the waves. He adjusted his routes, choosing darker shores and quieter times. Sometimes he had to wait for hours before the patrol boats finally drifted away. He kept his breath steady, refusing to let fear control his movements. He knew the risks, but he also knew the importance of every message he carried. Anna felt the tension in the town even before she stepped outside. Soldiers walked past her home more often, stopping to glance at the yard or check the side gate. She kept her expression gentle and calm, as if nothing in the world troubled her. She hung her laundry with careful movements, making sure her signals looked natural. Even a slight hesitation could raise suspicion, so she practiced keeping her hands steady no matter what she felt inside. Benjamin watched the situation from a distance, studying every report that came through the ring. He understood that the enemy was tightening their efforts, searching for something they could not yet name. He strengthened their methods, reminding his friends to move slowly, speak less, and avoid any sudden changes in their daily routines. He knew that panic could destroy what they had built, so he encouraged quiet patience. Each member felt the silent pressure growing around them. They lived with it day and night, carrying the weight like a shadow they could never outrun. Yet they continued their work, knowing the danger was a sign that their efforts mattered. The enemy was searching because the truth was slipping through their fingers. And so the group held firm, trusting that calm minds and steady hearts would guide them through the tightening grip around their homeland. Anna began to understand how much her quiet actions meant to the others. Each morning, she stepped outside as if she were simply handling her chores, but her mind stayed sharp. She watched the road, the trees, and even the sky, looking for anything unusual. She had learned to stay calm no matter what she felt inside. Her heart might race, her breath might tighten, but her hands moved with steady purpose. She lived in a world where every small motion carried meaning, and she accepted that responsibility without complaint. The soldiers who passed her home rarely looked twice. They saw a woman doing her daily work and nothing more. That was her strength. Her ordinary appearance became her shield. She could stand in the open without drawing a single suspicious glance, and that gave her a quiet advantage. She used that time to observe the movements on the road, the direction of the patrols, and the shifting patterns around the town. She paid close attention to details people normally ignored, storing them in her mind until she could share them in the safest way. Some days felt heavier than others. Clouds drifted low, and the air carried a tense stillness. Those were the moments when she sensed something important was happening. She walked through her yard slowly, giving herself time to watch the fields beyond the trees. She listened to distant sounds, boots, horses, or the faint echo of voices that did not belong to her neighbors. Even the quietest noise could reveal what was coming next. Her part in the effort required patience. She could not rush. She moved only when she was certain the moment was right. Sometimes she waited long after the sun had set, sitting by a window with her shawl wrapped around her shoulders. She kept the house dark so she could see outside without being seen. She watched for the signal that told her someone needed her to act. It might come late, it might not come at all, but she remained ready, understanding that this was the nature of her role. When she finally saw what she was waiting for, she rose without hesitation. Her footsteps stayed soft, her movements controlled. She walked outside as if she simply remembered something she had forgotten earlier. She did not look frightened or hurried. Her face carried the same calm expression she always wore. That calmness protected her more than anything else. It made her invisible in a way that no disguise could match. Her actions allowed the others to move at the right time. Without speaking a word, she guided them. A simple gesture, a small change, or a quiet moment at the right place became a bridge between danger and safety. She often wondered how people would see her if they knew the truth, but she never wished for recognition. She only wanted the message to reach the right hands. Every day she stepped outside knowing that one wrong move could destroy everything. But she also knew that her steady courage helped keep the heart of their work alive. She carried that truth with her, shaping her steps with purpose, and offering a silent strength that held the group together when everything around them felt uncertain. The news of Benedict Arnold's secret plan reached the spies like a thunderclap. Abraham held the letter in trembling hands, reading and rereading the words. The betrayal cut deeper than any battlefield wound. Arnold, once trusted, was now ready to hand West Point to the British. The thought of the fort falling into enemy hands shook everyone. If this plan succeeded, countless lives would be lost, and the revolution itself could fail. There was no time to hesitate. Abraham moved carefully through the streets, keeping the letter hidden beneath his coat. Every step felt heavier than the last. Soldiers walked nearby, unaware of the secret he carried, but any glance could ruin everything. He kept his mind focused, blocking fear and doubt. The message had to reach Benjamin Talmadge, and then Caleb Brewster, who would take it across the river. Every moment counted. One delay, one mistake, could allow the enemy to act first. Caleb waited in the darkness near the shore, scanning the water for signs of movement. The river looked calm, but he knew it could be treacherous. He had navigated it many times before, yet tonight felt different. The message he was about to carry could change the war. He gripped the papers carefully, making sure they stayed dry. The wind tugged at his coat, the moonlight reflected on the waves, and every shadow seemed suspicious. Still, he pushed forward, rowing silently, muscles straining, heart pounding. Meanwhile, Anna Strong prepared her signals. She hung the cloths on the line in a precise order. Each one meant a different message: the path Abraham would take, when Caleb should be ready, and the safest way to avoid detection. She worked quietly, aware that a single mistake could reveal the entire operation. Her calm hands betrayed none of the fear she felt inside. Every movement was calculated, every glance purposeful. She had become the silent guide for the group, her courage invisible to anyone passing by. The journey across the river was tense. Caleb rowed steadily, listening to the night around him. Every sound, from the rustle of leaves to distant voices, could signal danger. Yet he kept going. The papers in his hands carried the truth, a truth that could prevent disaster. He knew the risk. Capture could mean death, yet he refused to falter. The mission demanded strength and focus, and he gave it fully. Once the message reached Washington's trusted officers, the information was used immediately. Plans were adjusted, defenses strengthened, and Arnold's betrayal was uncovered before it could succeed. The spies' work had prevented catastrophe. They had acted in silence, yet their actions had turned the tide. Each person had played a role, ordinary lives shaping the fate of the revolution. That night, when the work was done, Abraham, Caleb, and Anna returned to their homes. No one cheered, no one knew the full story, but inside, they felt the weight of what they had accomplished. They had faced fear, deception, and danger, and had succeeded. Their courage had saved lives and preserved hope, proving that the smallest actions in the shadows can have the greatest impact. The British were furious. They knew something was slipping through their fingers, and they could feel the frustration growing with each passing day. Officers ordered more searches, more questioning, and more patrols. Soldiers knocked on doors at dawn, barged into homes, and demanded answers. Every citizen felt the tension. Neighbors looked at each other with suspicion, and no one knew whom to trust. The town had grown quiet with fear, but beneath the surface, the spies continued their work. Abraham moved carefully, blending into the crowds like any ordinary man. Every trip into the city became a test of patience and nerves. He listened closely, taking in every detail without drawing attention. The smallest sign, a soldier whispering, a cart moving at an unusual hour, a door left slightly open, could be important. He memorized everything, knowing that one piece of information could save lives or alert the enemy if handled wrongly. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, but he did not falter. Caleb watched the rivers and shores more carefully than ever. Patrol boats appeared at unexpected times, moving silently through the fog. He adjusted his schedule, waiting hours for the right moment to cross. Each night felt longer, each journey more dangerous. His hands gripped the oars tightly, muscles straining, eyes scanning the dark horizon. He knew the British were hunting for him, yet he continued, trusting his skill and knowledge of the water. Every successful crossing brought the group critical intelligence. Anna moved with her usual calm, but inside she felt the tension. Soldiers passed her home frequently, eyes scanning the surroundings. She continued her work with the laundry, sending coded signals that only the group could understand. Each gesture had to be perfect. One mistake could betray the entire network. Her careful attention kept the team connected, even when danger lurked close by. Her courage was silent but essential, holding the invisible lines of communication together. The fear in the town affected everyone. Families whispered behind closed doors, questioning each other. Neighbors avoided eye contact, uncertain who might be under suspicion. Even ordinary routines felt risky. Every movement had to be measured, every conversation cautious. The spies navigated this world with discipline, understanding that their lives and the success of the mission depended on staying unseen. They were surrounded by danger, yet they continued to act with precision and focus. As the British tightened their search, the spies grew more careful but also more determined. They learned to anticipate patrols, to move quietly, and to adapt quickly to changing conditions. Messages traveled through the safest routes, signals were hidden in plain sight, and every member stayed alert. The enemy's anger only confirmed that the intelligence they were gathering was working. Their silent efforts were shaping the course of events, even when the world outside seemed filled with suspicion and threat. The group understood that fear was constant, but courage could survive in spite of it. Each careful step, each quiet act, kept the work alive. The British could hunt, question, and intimidate, but they could not destroy the dedication of those who fought in shadows. Every day, the spies proved that patience, intelligence, and bravery could outmatch even the fiercest search. The war began to change, slowly but surely. Washington received yet another coded message, delivered in the quiet way that had become their secret system. Abraham had traveled carefully through the streets, Caleb had navigated the river, and Anna had sent her signal. Each part of the network had worked without error, and now the information reached the right hands at exactly the right time. The report described troop movements, supply plans, and hidden dangers that no one else could see. With this knowledge, Washington could make decisions that gave the Continental Army a real advantage. The officers studied the messages, tracing the enemy's movements, and planning their next steps. Supplies were shifted, patrols redirected, and strategies adjusted. What might have been disaster was turned into opportunity. The hidden work of the spies was finally showing its value. Every careful observation, every risk taken in silence, now made a difference. The tide of the war was moving, and the invisible hands guiding it were those of ordinary Americans who had stepped into extraordinary roles. Abraham returned home after delivering his part of the message. His heart was heavy with exhaustion, but he also felt a quiet satisfaction. The streets seemed less threatening now, though danger still lingered. He had contributed to something far bigger than himself. Caleb, after crossing the river multiple times, felt the same mixture of relief and determination. Each journey had been filled with risk, but each successful crossing strengthened the cause they served. They understood that their courage was small in the eyes of the world, but enormous in its effect. Anna, watching the activities from her home, realized how much their careful system had accomplished. The signals, the hidden messages, the quiet vigilance, they were no longer just exercises in caution. They were changing the outcome of battles. She thought of the soldiers who would now be safer, of the towns that might avoid destruction, and of the army that could fight with better knowledge. The work done in shadows had become a shield in daylight. The group knew the war was not over, but the moment confirmed that their efforts mattered. Each message carried the power to protect lives, to prevent mistakes, and to guide victories. The realization strengthened their resolve. They had faced fear, danger, and constant uncertainty, yet their careful steps had influenced the outcome. What they did not seek was fame or recognition, only the knowledge that their work helped their country survive. Even as the army gained advantages, the spies returned to ordinary appearances. Abraham walked the streets like any man, Caleb moved across the river as if running routine errands, and Anna continued her household tasks. Yet beneath these ordinary actions lay extraordinary courage. They understood that history was shaped not only by battles fought openly but also by careful acts in silence. Each contribution, unseen by the world, had helped steer the course of the revolution. That day marked a turning point. The intelligence had given the army hope, precision, and a chance to act before the enemy could. The work of the spies proved that bravery did not always wear a uniform. Sometimes it lived in quiet hearts, careful hands, and minds that dared to risk everything to protect the future. The war ended, but life for the spies returned to a quiet rhythm. Abraham walked the streets of his town without the weight of secret messages pressing on him. Caleb's boats rested along the river, the oars still for the first time in years. Anna tended her home and family, her hands no longer signaling hidden meanings. To the outside world, nothing had changed. They were ordinary citizens again. Yet inside, each carried the memory of the work they had done, the risks they had taken, and the lives they had helped save. No one celebrated their bravery. There were no parades, no medals, no public honors. Recognition was not their goal, and they had known it would never come. Their courage had been hidden, their victories invisible. Still, the satisfaction of knowing they had shaped history filled them quietly. They understood that freedom was built not only by soldiers on the battlefield but also by those who moved unseen, who spoke softly, who risked everything without attention or applause. Abraham often thought back to the nights he traveled through the city, carrying letters that could have cost him his life. He remembered the fear, the tension, and the steady control he had forced upon himself. Each decision had mattered, each careful step had protected lives. Though time had passed, he still felt the shadow of responsibility, but now it was tempered with pride. He had played a role in the birth of a nation, and that knowledge gave him peace. Caleb remembered the crossings of the river, the quiet hours in the dark, and the constant vigilance required to avoid enemy patrols. Each journey had tested his strength, patience, and skill. Now he could rest, but he never forgot the sense of purpose that guided him. His courage had been ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in effect. The risk had been immense, and the reward invisible, yet he knew he had helped tip the scales in favor of freedom. Anna's thoughts returned often to the signals she had sent from her window. Each piece of laundry, each carefully placed item had carried hidden meaning. She had acted with precision and calm, knowing that one misstep could destroy everything. Though no one outside her home would ever know, she carried the quiet satisfaction of having protected her country in her own way. Her courage had been silent, but it had mattered as much as any soldiers in the field. Together, their memories formed a shared story of bravery and sacrifice. They had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty and acted without recognition or reward. They had shaped events in silence, proving that ordinary people could make extraordinary contributions. They had learned that freedom often depended on those willing to act when no one was watching, and that courage could live in quiet hearts. Years later, their story would inspire others. Historians would uncover the hidden network, revealing how intelligence, patience, and careful courage had saved lives and preserved liberty. But for Abraham, Caleb, and Anna, the real reward had been the knowledge that their country had survived, that freedom had endured, and that even in silence, their actions had left a permanent mark on history. Their work proved one simple truth: the greatest courage often comes without notice, yet it shapes the world forever.